Hello everyone, my name is Sammy, probably better known as the Architect, and welcome to another episode of Bird's Eye View. This series allows you to understand at a higher level all of the different variables that allows you to take a step back and make some decisions based on your business processes. The goal for today is really to focus on the sales to cash process. Since the goal of this video is really to take a step back and allow you to see at a glance what the whole sales to cash process is. If ever you have any questions, don't hesitate to go in the comment section down below and leave any questions you may have. It will be a pleasure for me to go down in the comment section and answer all of your questions. The first element I really wanted to cover is focus. If you don't have focus, you won't be able to understand what is going on currently with your business, what you are used to do, and what is going to be the best way to scale up. Scaling up is a great word because it allows most people to change without knowing we're actually changing. We have a purpose, and for that purpose, we're willing to make all of the necessary changes to be able to answer and scale up as a business. Even if today we're going to focus on the sales to cash process, if you're a sales or a marketing director, don't hesitate to look at all of my other content. Fairly soon, I'm going to have a lot of different CRM processes that would be interesting for you. It will go over all of the forecasting options that is linked to the sales to cash process, the opportunity process, and the leads that come before this, and all of the campaigns, plus much more information. So if you don't want to miss this, please don't hesitate to look at the description down below. It will be linked fairly soon. Otherwise, enjoy. Understanding the entity that you're dealing with is really important in the sales to cash process because you could be dealing with a business, which is B2B, or with the end customer directly, which is B2C. Both of them could be done simultaneously and in parallel, but they might have some small differences. It may be possible that one specific type of customer will require a full-on contract while others could just abide to the terms of services. But in any case, you have a contract in place. You have a way that you're engaging with the customer to know that you've delivered all you promised, and there's a lot to gain to understand this whole section. While some contracts could be a terms of services, a contract agreement, or any other type of formal document, it may also not be a formal written agreement. Since we understand that there's a contract in place, then we will be able to see what are the different variables in a B2B or a B2C context. But it is important to always take into consideration the accounting impact, since it will help us with our decisions. Let's switch to the bird's eye view dashboard where we're going to look into the sales to cash process. No matter if you're dealing with a B2B or B2C, we need to understand the building blocks that are important for the sales to cash process. Before going into the sales to cash process, it's important to note what is the entry point of this entire process. In most cases, since you're interacting with a customer, the CRM processes is really what is important. To clarify what I mean by CRM, it is every single point of entry between yourself and the customer and all of the communication channels. This could be the outbound sales, the inbound marketing, and support cases, only to name a few. In most businesses, the opportunity is what represents the intent of the customer. The customer will want to purchase either services or products from you. This will be the representation of what the prospect's needs are. Once the opportunity has been nailed down, this is when we fully enter the sales to cash process. Keep in mind, it may vary, but this is the full view. The quote, also known as the estimate or quotation, will summarize the products and services that the customer showed interest throughout the process. It may be possible that the requirement to move to the next step would be to receive the purchase order that states that the customer is in accordance to your quotation. Once you have received the purchase order or received the formal approval from the customer, we can then go through the ordering process, and the next part is really the order. The order is also known as the sales order since we have the purchase order, but also others which are the transfer orders and the work orders, for example. All of the steps that were mentioned previously did not have any accounting impact. From now on, most of the transactions we're going to go over will have an accounting impact, and it's important to take them into account so that we can understand why they are useful. The next step would be to go over what I would call as the full sales to cash process. So far, we have reviewed the opportunity coming from the CRM processes and the first two steps, which are the quote and the order. All three of them help companies understand what their pipeline is and what the conversion rate from their lead prospect to customers are, and which was the successful quote that made them win the business. The next step would be to go over what I would call as the full sales to cash process. Following the sales order is the invoice. The invoice captures the information recorded in the sales order, such as the term, the shipping addresses, that will help the invoice understand when it needs to be billed, when it's going to expect to have the revenue, as well as all of the accounts that will be impacted by the transaction, driven by the items that are being sold, as well as the accounts receivable. Even if you're not an accountant, understanding this concept will allow you to take a step back, understand which products are giving you the most amount of revenue, and allows you to rotate your inventory based on what is selling the most. Following the invoice creation, you officially know that the customer owes you money. Based on the term, you will know when to expect the payment. Hence, the next step of the process is the payment itself. The payment allows you to record that the customer indeed paid you. When your accountants, controller, or VP of finance talk about the aging reports, it's really the amount of time that has passed between the invoice and the reception of the payment from the customer. While you're able to identify during the payment creation which cash or bank account has been affected by the customer's payment, it may be possible that you do not know which account has been impacted yet, or you did not actually receive the money. On the other hand, we may not know at this instant which bank account has received the cash. Hence, the payment could not be applied to a bank account yet. In this case, we're going to leverage what we call an unapplied account. This is the responsibility of the deposit record, which will identify which bank or cash account has received the actual money. A use case that happens often is whenever you use a specific platform to sell your product. These platforms could be Amazon, eBay, Squarespace, etc. But let's take the example of Amazon. If you make a sale through Amazon, you will not receive the money right away. In most cases, you're going to receive an amount of money at the end of a period, either at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, depending on what your arrangements are with the company. And you will be able to receive a whole check with a report that details what are the products that have been sold, which category that have been listed as, what were the commissions applied to each item. This way, you will know in one specific report, import all of your deposits and which accounts it will be deposited to. On the other hand, it doesn't need to be the case. You may want to import all of your bank statements at the end of a specific time frame, either at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month. So that way you have all of the money that you have deposited into a specific account into one record that you import into your ERP. In brief, the invoice, the payment, and the deposit are one of the most important transactions that you may record into your ERP for your financial reports. They are also referred as the actuals. An efficient way to summarize the invoice and the payment, especially for retail, is to leverage the cash sale. The cash sale is simply a merge of both of these two records, plus the next step that we're going to cover, which is the fulfillment process. On top of grouping these elements as the booking and the actuals, there's also another element that needs to be taken into account. This grouping is what I would call the billing. It's not necessarily another step in the process, but how we're going to use each of the steps. For example, we could have a billing schedule that allows us to identify in the order how many invoices needs to be printed out in a year. Another example would be the fees attached to the project, which is dictated either by time and materials or a fixed price, driven by milestones. Let's cover at an overview what the fulfillment process is within the context of the sales to cash process. Keep in mind, we will have a full video going over the fulfillment process, but it is important to understand how it pertains to this specific flow. Within this fulfillment node, I really grouped up two different processes. The first one is the procure to pay processes that will allow us to take into inventory all of the items that were marked as resale, which comes from a specific vendor or manufacturer. A just-in-time item that needs to be ordered every time it has been sold to a customer, otherwise known as a special order, or a drop-shipped item that is sent directly from the vendor to the end customer. If any of these use cases don't pertain to the current use case, we will simply fulfill the items from our inventory and send it to the shipping address that was associated both in the order and the invoice. The importance of this step is really to understand what are the impacts to the cost of goods sold. We are then able to report on the profits based on the cost of goods sold and the revenue. In this process, we can take much more into account, such as aligned costs, but we will review the process another time. The next element that the sales to cash process is linked to is the revenue recognition. This one is a big step. So what we're going to cover in this video is really just the basics and how it pertains to this process. Whenever you sell an item, you might recognize directly when it was sold or when the shipment has been sent out. But there may be cases where it is much more complex. For example, what you sold is a project. Within that specific project, you may have some parts that are subscriptions, while others are going to be installations that are going to be delivered from the get-go. These could be recognized as soon as they are done, which is a milestone, while the others could be done over time through specific timeframes, usually through periods, which are months. But there are much more complex situations that may occur, which is the reason why we won't go in depth in this subject. Now that we have a grasp on all of the moving elements of the sales to cash process, we can go over some of the differences and similarities between the B2B and B2C use cases. In a B2B mindset, it is important to understand that the focus is really to make sure that you have a long-term relationship with a customer. It is important to nail down all the small elements to ensure that you will sustain that long-term relationship without any hassles. In the B2C context, on the other hand, it's really important to nail down all of the different elements that are important for your process, trimming down anything that is unnecessary so that way you can scale up with the volume. In summary, we must understand who the end customer is so that way we can deliver what has been promised and make sure that we deliver quality content. It doesn't matter who the end customer is as long as what we have promised to deliver is exactly what has been delivered. Even if you have more than one use case, the important portion is to make sure that you have a limited amount of use cases to cover. This way, it is easier to maintain the level of quality and ensure all of your customers obtain a high standard of quality. This pretty much ends our bird's eye view episode, focusing on the sales to cash process. If you have any questions or concerns on any of the topic discussed today, don't hesitate to leave a message in the comment section down below. As mentioned in the video, there's going to be links in the description down below to all of the deep dive episodes of Bird's Eye View, notably the fulfillment process or the revenue recognition. The feedback you're going to provide really helps me grow, and I hope the content I'm providing to you today was worth your time. Please like if you found value in the video, subscribe if you're interested in learning more on the subjects that I'm covering, and make sure to enable the bell notifications so that way you're up to date with all of my recent content. Hope you have an amazing day. Peace.